What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. We are back doing our final preview for the Autumn Internationals. This one is going to be Ireland versus Argentina. This is going to be finishing off the final weekend of the Autumn Internationals minus the Barbarians game going on. For anyone who hasn't somehow yet seen any of these preview videos, what we do is check on a game of Rugby 20 in the background of the teams that are going to be playing, and then over the top we talk about the official teams announced, who we think is going to do well, who we think is going to do badly, and finally give a score prediction for the game. There's a lot to talk about, so let's get this game kicked off and underway. Alrighty, Bauer is going to get us kicked off and underway. This bomb technique's been working pretty well in some of the other videos, so we'll give it another go. We'll see if we can recover. No, we cannot. Right, Ireland versus Argentina. This is going to be a really exciting game, actually. This is a really nice way to end it off. There are a lot of big games going on this weekend, but this is one of the ones that I think may be slightly harder to determine who the winner might be, but this could also be a really, really exciting game of rugby. Who should we talk about? Let's talk about Ireland. We've got to talk about Ireland. Come on, Ireland last week managing to beat New Zealand in a very, very good performance. It wasn't one of these games that they sort of squeaked past them with a last-minute drop goal. They won. They won by like 9 points or something. Now they got a good score on them. They managed to put away a lot of points. They managed to stop themselves from conceding quite a few points. And overall, I think they played a really good way. So many people were really stepping up. A lot of the lock departments working really well. The line-out setup was really good, really disrupting of the New Zealand line-out. They managed to mess about with some of the scrums. James Lowe had a superb game against his own nation from back in the day playing with New Zealand. So I think Ireland will be very, very happy with last week, and they'll be coming into this game with a full head of steam. So let's check out the team that they've announced for this week going up against Argentina. Starting off with the front row then, Andrew Porter, Ronan Kelleher and Tyg Furlong. This is the front row we've been seeing a bunch through this autumn series, and it's working well. Ireland are certainly on the way up now. I did say back when it was in the Six Nations that I thought Ireland had this sort of underlying chance to get this team together and may go on to win that Six Nations. They didn't quite come together in time in that Six Nations, but I think they are finally managing to put all the pieces together now, and having that solid scrum foundation is certainly being a real key area for them, so they'll be really happy with that. In the lock departments, Ian Henderson at 4 and James Ryan at 5, retaining that captaincy for James Ryan. Yeah, both these boys working really well. They did in the Six Nations. They have done now in this autumn series. I think they've got a really good game plan with the way they set out their line-outs, having so many big jumpers in there, as well as a lot of the locks. They have a lot of very talented players now in this Ireland team. Is one thing that I've really come into light now. All of their forwards are also massive jackal threats. Your Tyg Furlong, your Ian Henderson, your Keelan Doris, your James Ryan, Tyg Byrne. They're all there. They're all there just killing teams with jackling threats. They can't afford to lose any breakdown. I think it's working really well for them. No need to change any of those front 5. And then finally in the back 3 then we've got Keelan Doris at 6, who had a brilliant game versus New Zealand, Josh van der Fleer in the 7 shirt, and Jack Conan in 8. This may even be the exact team that started against New Zealand. I can't even think back now to what that team was, but it must be very, very close. And to be honest, this 1-8 is massive. They will have seen how Argentina got on in some of the other games in terms of their scrummaging. They're looking okay in terms of using that scrum and using some of the maul systems. They need big forwards on the field, and that's what Ireland have gone for. You've just got to out-muscle them. I mean, it's going to be a tough game. Every team that's gone on to play Argentina is left with a few bruises. You definitely want to have some big boys in there. But the amount of turnover threats and line-out threats they have in this team, I think this Ireland team is looking really, really good. Looking further back towards the backs then, the half-back partnership, slight switch here. Conor Murray finally managing to start a game over Gibson Park, who's been playing well at this point. And Joey Carberry will be coming in that 10 shirt ahead of Sexton. So, I mean, they've done the big game now. The New Zealand one was the big one. That's no sort of disrespect to any Argentina supporters, but I would say New Zealand are a much bigger team to attempt to beat than Argentina at this point in time. I think it's worthwhile switching these players up. They know now that Gibson Park is now more than willing to be that starting 9 if he needs to. Conor Murray's the experienced 9, so no trouble there with interchanging there. And Joey Carberry, give him some time now as a fly half, just in case when it gets onto that World Cup, Johnny Sexton picks up an injury or doesn't turn up for whatever reason. It's got to be worthwhile to have a starting fly half that isn't Johnny Sexton, just to get that in there. I think this is a good move to put him on a team like Argentina that will be a first-tier nation, but will also bring you a really, really tough game. I think that's a good move. In the centre partnership then, one switch out here. We've got Robbie Henshaw Henshaw coming back in on the inside centre. Really nice to see him back. I didn't actually know how long he was going to be out with his injury for. So it's nice to see Robbie Henshaw back in this team ahead of Bundyaki and Gary Ringrose in the outside centre, who last week had a really, really good game. Again, just carving through those lines. I mean, he left the pitch looking like the Michelin Man with pieces of bandage taped around his head, trying to keep him in one part, I guess you could probably say. Really, really good game from him. He'll be looking forward to try and carry on some of that momentum going into this game. And then finally in the back three, James Lowe, having that superb game last week, retains his 11 shirt. Robert Balakoon comes in on the right wing, who I think I might have actually seen before. I think I've only ever seen him play one game for Ireland. I'm not sure how many caps he will be on, but the name rings a bit of a bell, but I can't put a face to the name, so it'll be nice to see how he gets on. And then finally in that 15 shirt, Hugo Keenan, retaining that fullback shirt, who I really like. I think Hugo Keenan is a very underrated player. I think he does very well in that fullback shirt, considering he started his Ireland career in that right wing. He's moved very well and can interchange between wing and fullback if we need to. And if you go all the way back to that Six Nations, when they had the red cards versus Wales, he also just fitted in everywhere. He was in breakdowns, he was playing at centre, he was just playing everywhere to try and make that extra man as much as he could. I think Hugo Keenan's a really good player, but as a 1-15, this is a solid Ireland team. Certainly there's a few areas where this is stepped down, you could say, from the New Zealand team, but nothing, major. This is still a brilliant 1-8. Maybe Joey Carberry is slightly more inexperienced and a slightly less experienced right wing. But there's nothing wrong with putting Robbie Henshaw on. He went off for the Lions. I thought he was playing well there as well. I think this is a really, really good Ireland team, and they'll have a lot of confidence going into this game. As we move into half-time here, let's talk about some of the Ireland replacements. So starting off in this front row replacements, then Dan Sheenan, Cian Healy, and Tom O'Toole. So I would probably say a slightly lesser cap front row. I mean, well, not on average, because Cian Healy must be on like 5,000 caps by now. But between the other three, slightly lesser capped second half. But at the same time, Argentina are willing to progress through to that second half. Their scrum will hold it for quite a while. But Ireland don't tend to change at sort of half time. Maybe not even the 50th minute. Maybe they'll be looking for like 55, 60 minutes before bringing these lads on. And Cian Healy's an experienced head in there, so I'm sure he'll get on with some of the other boys and tell them where to stand and tell them what to do. Other replacement forwards, we've got Tyg Byrne and Peter O'Mahony. So they've gone for the 5-3 split. We've seen a lot of teams go up against Argentina wanting to do the 6-2 because they know how much they love their forwards. So maybe there'll be an interesting game tactic here. We've seen how much Ireland are enjoying the offload game, the back running game, playing a lot more like New Zealand than we've ever seen before. So good they're beating New Zealand. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see the forwards doing what they do, but a lot of the forwards being used to do clear outs and breakdown areas, and we might see a lot more backs being used in this game. That'll be really fun. And we've also seen other teams struggle to actually meet the Argentinians head on, and teams are scoring points by going through the backs. Why not do it yourself? You've got a good set of backs. I think that's a good move. Tyg Byrne, real shame for him not to be starting more games. I feel like he's so good at everything that he makes maybe the world's best sub, which is a real shame for him because he can start any game, but he's so good to come on from that bench. He makes such an impact. I think it's a really nice move for him. And then finally the replacement backs. We've got a replacement scrum half in Craig Casey. It'll be nice to see. I want to see a bit more from Gibson Park and Conor Murray have really taken over that 9 shirt, so it'll be nice to see a bit more from Craig Casey, still a young lad. Harry Byrne coming in here, brother of Ross Byrne, who I feel so bad for Ross Byrne. He doesn't get any game time with Ireland. Harry Byrne coming in though is meant to be up and coming. He's a much younger brother, I think, of Ross Byrne, so younger lad will be going maybe to the next World Cup as well. You've got to give him some game time. And finally, Keith Earls will come on at some point. Can go wing, can go fullback, but I imagine he'll go on that right wing, maybe instead of Balakoon, or he may even go left wing instead of James Lowe, just to keep Balakoon on. Might be a really good move. But as an Ireland team, this looks good, and I'm sure Argentina will be desperate to try and make something from this game, because I think they could be in for a tough old day. So speaking of which, let's talk about Argentina for a bit. So Argentina have sat in a very sort of middle ground at the minute. They lost some of their games in the Rugby Championship. They got a win and a draw against Wales in the summer. They lost to France and then had a really dominant win over Italy. That game was a little bit more distant than I thought it was going to be. I really thought Italy were going to get a bit closer with that one. Argentina are very sort of in the middle at the minute. I can't quite work out whether they're playing really well or just can't cope with a Tier 1 rugby. They're not really beating a lot of Tier 1 teams bar Italy, but most Tier 1 teams are beating Italy as well. So it'll be difficult for them to cope, but they did have a really good game. They seemed much more settled in that Italy game. I think the lack of pressure being applied to them, they really begin to sort of sort themselves out. So against Ireland, might have a tough old game, but we'll quickly run through the Argentina team. Starting off in that front row, Thomas Gallo, Julian Montoya retaining that captaincy and absolutely led from the front last week. Brilliant game. And Francisco Gomez Cordella, who also had a really good game last week, actually. That scrum holding up really well for them. In terms of the lock departments, Guido Petty and Thomas Lavanini. So this is the same team we've seen pretty much now through this autumn series. And then finally in this back three, Santiago Grodones. We've got a slight change there. Marcus Kramer and Pablo Matera moving to 8, which is, you know, we have seen him move around in this back three a little bit, quite a few times now. He seems to actually be quite a versatile player. It's a real shame that he lost the captaincy, but Julian Montoya is playing such good rugby at the minute. I don't really think you can disagree with that. It's a hard bunch of forwards. They do like getting in there, but like I say, every week for Argentina, discipline will be the big thing for them. In the back setup then, we have Thomas Cubelli taking over that scrum half position yet again. He's playing good rugby at the minute. Very sort of good with the ball in hand. I do kind of wish he'd get the ball out a little bit faster. He does hold it in the ruck a little bit too long. And Santiago Carreras will retain that fly half position. Really haven't seen a lot of Sanchez starting in any of these games, which is a bit of a shame for him. In the centre partnership, De La Fuente and Moroni. Again, this is the team we've seen as we've been going through. In the back three, Lucio Cinti, Matteo Carreras is going to move to the right wing as opposed to the left wing where we've normally seen him. And finally, Emmanuel Boffelli. Boffelli had a brilliant game against Italy. Really dominant in that backfield. Really making a lot of that full-back position. Really getting under those balls and dominating that backfield. I think he's a very good player. Hopefully we'll be able to deal with some of the pressure that Ireland will be putting him under this week. And finally, the substitutions. We've got Bosch, Callas and Bello coming in there in the front row. Lucas Pavlos, which is a great name. Facundo Issa, I'm not really sure the pronunciation of his first name, I just know him as Issa. Gonzalo Bertrano, which again is a name you just don't see a lot in this Argentina team, but I think he's quite a good player. Nicolas Sanchez will be coming on at some point in that second half just to steady the ship. And finally, a new cap in Cordero, so we look forward to see how he will get on in this game. And it's a perfectly fine Argentina team. This is the Argentina team we've seen through most of these games. So I just don't know if I can see this team beating Ireland. If you've got an Ireland team that can beat New Zealand, and Argentina lost very comfortably to New Zealand, I'm not sure if they'll be able to sustain the pressure, but they did have a good game against France. So what do we think in terms of score prediction? For me personally, I am going to lean towards Ireland for this one. I just think the Ireland team is looking so good at the minute. I really hope they haven't peaked too early before that World Cup. I really hope they manage to keep this momentum going through to the World Cup. But I'm going to lean towards Ireland, and I'm going to say it's actually going to be a bit more comfortable than we saw in the France-Argentina game. I'm actually going to say Ireland to win. I'm going to say quite a lot, actually. I'm going to say 18. I'm going to say between that 2 and 3 score marker. I think they've got the players. I think they've got the setup. I think they'll be really just boosted from that win over New Zealand. I think they'll be going really hard for this game. But of course, guys, I am but one man on the internet talking nonsense about rugby. So make sure you guys drop down in the comment section what you think will come from this game, what you think the winner will be, what do you think the scoreline will be. We've seen a couple of people dropping down actual physical scorelines, which is great because there's always a chance you can get them right and then you get all the bragging rights. It's a lot of fun. But I hope you've enjoyed all these preview videos through the Autumn Nation series, guys. If you have, make sure to drop this video a like and make sure to subscribe to the channel just to keep up to date with all of the rugby videos as they come out, especially when we get around to the next 6 nations. But I hope you all enjoyed today, guys, and are looking forward to a really good weekend of some hard rugby, as am I. I hope you all enjoyed today, guys. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.